It's another delicious day here in the Let's Make Food from Food Kitchen, and today we're making some potato and leek soup. What's a leek? Great question. A leek is a vegetable and it is in the onion family. What do they call it? The genus. So it's related closely to the onion, the garlic, things like that. It's not a traditional onion. It has kind of the onion flavor and smell. It doesn't grow the bulb though. This grows in layers in the ground, and it actually grows fairly quickly and it grows fairly easily. So it's something that you could plant and grow yourself if you're into growing vegetables. There are some steps to prepare it and only parts of it that you can use or should use. You can eat the tops, though it's very tough. So, I mean, you could fry it and eat it, but what I do, and let me move one out of the way so you can see what I'm doing. I'm gonna cut everything that is dark green off, okay? And then I can save it and use it for a vegetable stock. That's what I would do with the tops, okay? And then we're gonna cut off the bottom and set that aside too. Now I'm gonna maybe plant this and see if it grows similar to the green onion as an experiment and see how that works out. Maybe it will. I haven't tried it before. So what we wanna do is just thinly slice it. Okay, and I am going to rinse this in my sieve because I want all these little layers are going to come apart pretty easily because that's the way they grow. And I've had leeks that are very clean and some that are just full of little layers of dirt and pieces of dirt, and I don't want that in my recipe. So I use the sieve so that I can easily see and rinse really well. See, here's some dirt. I can see it calm. I don't know if you can see it pretty well. Right there is a layer of dirt. So do you see how that happens in there? We want to get all of that washed out because we don't want it in our recipe. This has some really good flavor to it, and I am just slicing it. And it doesn't even really have to be this thin because we're going to puree it at the end of the day. So this is just my habit. I could have done larger chunks, but this is how we are today. So I'm going to go ahead and do the other one, and then we'll get it rinsed. Then we're going to work on the next steps. Okay, these are cut and rinsed and ready to go. So the next thing I want to do is take my butter and put it in my pan to get it melted. Once the butter is about melted, I'm going to toss these in there and we're going to cook them until they soften up. It's about 10 minutes depending on how thick you slice these. Then when there's about a minute left, we're going to add our crushed garlic. I don't add it any sooner because I don't want my garlic to burn. So I'm going to go ahead and find a spatula because I didn't think that far ahead. All right, just dump it on in there. Stir them all up so they're all evenly coated and let them cook down. Now, while that's cooking down, we can go over some other ingredients. I have my 2 pounds of Yukon Gold potatoes here. What I'm going to do is go ahead and cut them up into smaller pieces and put them back in my bowl. I went ahead and peeled them ahead of time so you didn't have to sit here and watch me do all that. But this is something you can do to use up your time while your leeks cook. Okay? I also have 4 cups of vegetable stock. There is a link below to a recipe for some delicious stock that you can use. If you decide to do a store-bought stock, please try to find one that doesn't have added sugar, carrageenan, gargum. All those things are unnecessary in our recipes and in our bodies. So, I mean, sugar is okay sometimes here and there, but you don't need it in your vegetable broth. So I like to make my own. I try to make a big batch and can it. Okay, those are cut up. Once my leeks are cooked, we'll come back. Okay, my leeks are almost done. Look at this. I'm going to show you the consistency here. They're nice and soft, okay? So what I want to do is go ahead and get my garlic in there. It is 2 cloves pressed. Trying to get it all out. I know I shouldn't be rubbing the metal on my metal, but for my knife, but here we are. So we're going to cook that down for about a minute and let our garlic get nice and toasty in there. Okay, garlic is cooked, so now it's time to add our vegetable stock. Okay. That was 4 cups. Then we are going to add our ground sage, salt, thyme, and 1 bay leaf. We're going to stir it up and add our potatoes. Okay, we're going to turn this up to a high. We want to bring it to a boil. If you use russets, they're not going to take as long as the Yukon Golds will. You can use russets in this recipe if that's what you have. Just know that they're not going to take as long, and your texture will be slightly different in this recipe because texture for the golds are a little creamier. So check them. We want them 12 to 15 minutes on these to get fork tender. Then we're going to fish out the bay leaf and we're going to start pureeing it either with a blender or a hand immersion blender mixer, and then we'll add our cream. Speaking of which, get a cup of heavy cream ready to go in the next 15 minutes. This is about done here. I've turned it off. Now it's time to puree. Now you can pour this into a food processor, a blender, or you can use an immersion blender. Now the immersion blender I find is kind of easy because you don't have to worry about transferring it into something and then back out. So I'm just going to go ahead and give this a go. But first, I almost forgot to fish out my bay leaf. All right, now the bay leaf's out and we can puree. So I just want this to be completely smooth, and it really doesn't take very long. I just want to kind of do a little fork test and make sure I'm not finding any chunks in here, which I'm not. Okay, so I can clean this up and be right back. Okay, I've got a couple more tools here. I'm going to turn this back on to low. I guess I didn't really need to turn it off. I just do it because habit, I guess. So I'm going to take my heavy cream and pour it in there, and I want to give it a stir. Okay, and this is where you want to do a consistency check. And your consistency is 100% completely up to you. Do you like it thin? Do you like it thick? Make adjustments. If you like really thick soups, start with maybe a half a cup of heavy cream and check your consistency. If you like it the way that it is, don't add any more. If you want to thin it out some, then go ahead. Now, if you've added your full cup of heavy cream and you want it to be a little thinner, I would say don't add more heavy cream, but add either more vegetable broth or some water. And just do maybe a quarter a cup at a time until you get the consistency you want. Okay, so I've got this all mixed in. My consistency is really nice and smooth and creamy. What I want to do is get rid of my measuring cup. I want to take my spoon, I want to give it a taste. It's hot. Ooh, delicious. Salt. I like to start conservative with my salts in soups and things because you can't take it back out once you've added it in. I kind of knew that I would be adding salt at the end, but I wanted to check it first because potatoes tend to just suck it all up. So I added some more salt, and of course that is to your taste on how much you add, but it definitely needed it for me. So some other optional things you can add in here: toss in some grated Parmesan cheese, some grated cheddar cheese. Change up your flavor however you want to. So I'm turning that back off because it's already still hot. Sometimes when you add that heavy cream, it can cool it down too much for you. That's just going to sit for a minute, and I am going to chop up some chives. And you can use green onions, you can use parsley. It's mostly for color. It'll add a little flavor too, of course, but I want it to look pretty. So I'm adding a little bit of the chives. And mine are gone for the winter, so these are store-bought. And it's time to ladle some into the bowl. I was trying not to make a huge mess, but I guess I didn't completely succeed. Okay, we have our soup, and we're gonna sprinkle some chives on top, and voila, it's done. Okay, now all that's left is the delicious taste test. Oh, it's so smooth and creamy. That is so good. I think my husband would add a bunch of cayenne pepper. Other than that, it's delicious. I might add some cheddar cheese to this too. I love cheesy potato soup, but that's not what this recipe is. Again, this is change it to the way that you like to have your flavors. It's delicious the way that it is. Thanks for joining me here today in the Let's Make Food from Food Kitchen. From my kitchen to yours, let's make food from food.
That's one boy.